Hello and welcome to ARIRANG News. It's Monday, September 29th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. In the headlines this afternoon, the floor leaders of Korea's main rival parties meet this morning and will meet again in about an hour in an attempt to break the parliamentary deadlock. A former high-level U.S. official says the diplomatic situation in Northeast Asia is complicating the resumption of the six-party talks and calls on South Korea to take a leading role in dealing with North Korea. And thousands of demonstrators calling for a true democratic election clashed with police in Hong Kong overnight, leaving dozens injured. And our top story this afternoon, high-level talks among the rival parties have been taking place throughout the morning aimed at breaking the parliamentary deadlock. A three-way meeting involving the victims of April's ferry accident will take place in about an hour. ARIRANG's National Assembly correspondent Kim Young-gil starts us off.
The floor leaders of the nation's rival parties sat down for talks this Monday morning, seeking an agreement that would put an end to the months-long parliamentary standoff. The main point of contention remains a special bill that would investigate the causes behind April's ferry tragedy. The floor leader of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, Park Young-san, entered this morning's talks by saying that the bereaved family members of the Seoul ferry disaster wanted to meet this Monday afternoon, to which both rival party floor leaders agreed. An agreement in that meeting could set the stage for a normalization of parliamentary affairs. The ruling party is set to open a plenary session tomorrow and vote on a string of pending bills, regardless of whether the main opposition, which is currently boycotting all proceedings, is present.
The opposition party must show up at tomorrow's plenary session and show its sincerity. September has come and gone without any progress to speak of. It is urgent that we pass the 91 bills that are awaiting vote and discuss another 30 bills that are vital for the economy.
The opposition party promised last week to return to their posts no matter what if the plenary session was postponed until September 30th. Assembly Speaker Chung Lee-hwa adjourned last Friday's plenary session just 9 minutes after it opened, saying he would trust the sincerity of the opposition party's request for a delay. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
The United Nations is denying reports that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has invited UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to visit Pyongyang. There was speculation that an invitation may have come in a letter written by the North Korean leader to the UN chief. Ban's office admits that a letter was indeed handed over by North Korean Foreign Minister Lee Soo-yong last week on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, but it stresses that there was no invitation, saying the letter was in response to a congratulatory message sent by Ban earlier this month for a national holiday in North Korea.
Thank you.
Now, sending out messages that the international community is interested in North Korea's human rights issues will contribute to improving the way ordinary North Koreans are treated. Those were the words of President Park Geun-hye at a meeting with a New York-based think tank on the last day of her overseas trip last week. The presidential office released those remarks on Sunday. President Park apparently said that the Commission of Inquiry by the UN Human Rights Council, which was set up to investigate human rights violations in North Korea, is doing a great job spreading awareness of the issue. She also said reunification is the main solution to all problems connected with the North, including its nuclear weapons program. Now, the very obvious yet subtle diplomatic tensions between South Korea, China, and Japan are complicating the resumption of the six-party nuclear disarmament talks. That's according to former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs Kurt Campbell. In an exclusive interview with ARIRANG's Hwang Sung-hee, he also calls on South Korea to assume a bigger role.
In the past, the biggest problem six-party was just to get North Korea to come to the table. But now we have a whole host of very difficult bilateral issues in Asia that might complicate getting back to the table. So as a result, I think we've got to be open to other frameworks and other discussions. At the heart of that, in my view, is a recognition that the driving force behind diplomacy with North Korea increasingly has to be South Korea. I think given South Korea's increasing stature, its remarkable performance, it is only right that they take a leading role in the politics and diplomacy around the status of its own peninsula.
Do you think a new momentum can be found through a bigger role by China?
I'm one of those people that believe that the key, subtly and strategically, to unlocking some of the problems on the Korean peninsula is an improving relationship between South Korea and China. And in fact, if anything, the country that has undermined China's security, has created real problems for Beijing, is not the United States, but their dear friends North Korea. And I think they're coming to recognize that. And the more that South Korea and China work together, the more likely it is that China will risk putting more pressure on North Korea because they know they have a country that they can work with in South Korea.
Wouldn't a strong South Korea-China ties hurt the trilateral relationship between the United States, South Korea, and Japan?
I think it's a good thing that China and South Korea are working more closely together. I am hurt and saddened by what's going on between Japan and South Korea, and I'd like very much to see steps being taken on both sides to improve the relationship. And I know how difficult it is. And I also am of the view that the United States could do more to help that process along. So I think what we want are improving constellation, web of bilateral relations. I think that will help us in Asia.
There are criticisms that Washington's strategic patience policy on North Korea has led to a bigger, more developed North Korean nuclear program. What's your take on that?
We've done everything we can to pose to North Korea that it faces a fundamental choice. It can have better relations with the West, more integration, more economic support, or it can live as exile and outcast as a nuclear state. Choose one of the two. But I think we've learned, at least from most of our experience, that North Korea does not want to relinquish its nuclear weapons. And that's fundamentally at odds with our strategic diplomacy.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. It's my honor. Thank you very much.
Now, global sales of smartwatches, glasses, and fitness bands are expected to top $3 billion this year and eventually $10 billion by the year 2017. But could this next evolution in mobile technology knock the smartphone off its perch? Here's our Connie Kim for this week's Industry Insight.
With many believing that the smartphone market is already reaching maturity, there's a new kid on the block: wearables. Currently in its infancy stage, the market value of wearables is forecast to more than double over the next 4 years. So what can consumers expect next? Take a look. Leave your smartphone in your pocket, and with a smartwatch on your wrist alone, you can make calls, send emails, monitor your health, and stay fit. That's what the future holds for us. That's if wearables really take off. It started with Google Glass. With a voice command, the miniature computer in the upper right corner vision will take pictures, record video and audio, and search for a location. Samsung, wanting to get out in front of Apple, came out with Galaxy Gear, although pretty prematurely, many would say. And the highly anticipated Apple Watch and LG G Watch R were unveiled earlier this month. But the question is, would you wear it every day? It may be fun to show off to your friends for a day or two, but it's currently a hard sell to non-techies. And that's where the fashion industry comes in. Google's partnered up with designer Diane von Furstenberg to offer a set of stylish frames and clip-on shades. Apple is working with Burberry and high-end watchmaker Tag Heuer in a move to go stylish. But fashion is only the start. The short battery life of wearables is another factor that could turn off consumers.
In order to become part of our daily lives, the battery life needs to be extended. Battery technology is currently catered to the auto industry. Bendable, flexible, and stretchable batteries that can fit into wearables need to be developed.
The small display screens are another issue in a world where size does matter. The solution may come in the form of holograms or virtual displays controlled by voice command.
Interface will increasingly be voice as opposed to text, largely because you can speak to a wearable device and not be limited by the size of the keyboard. So that really is the future, I think.
From smartphones to now smartwatches and glasses, the technology is poised to be all around us in the near future, whether through smart homes, smart cars, or even smart shoes. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
In the year 2012, for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. People in Hong Kong woke up to a rough start of the week as thousands of protesters struggled with police into the early morning hours on Monday. The number of demonstrators has diminished, but crowds of people still remain on the streets, resolute in their demands to see a genuine democratic process adopted in Hong Kong. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
Thousands of protesters continue to occupy major streets in the heart of Hong Kong. The crowds have now somewhat thinned out, but many roads leading to the city's financial district remain blocked off as protesters ignore warnings from authorities who say the demonstrations are illegal. The Hong Kong Information Services Department says more than 36 people have been injured in clashes. Riot police have used tear gas and pepper spray on the protesters, many of whom wore goggles, ponchos, and held up umbrellas to protect themselves. Fresh protests have also broken out in the shopping district of Causeway Bay and in Mong Kok. Hong Kong's chief executive has called on citizens not to believe what he called rumors of police violence.
I hope citizens can keep their calm and not falsely believe in these rumors. The police are working hard to maintain social order, which includes the free flow of traffic. They are also protecting public safety and have exercised great restraint during their operations.
The Occupy Central movement on Sunday follows a week of student-led protests which are demanding universal suffrage in the city's first chief executive election in 2017. The demonstrators want to be allowed to directly vote for top city officials rather than Beijing-vetted candidates. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Over in Japan, rescue workers have resumed their search for dozens of missing hikers who were left stranded on Mount Ontake when it erupted without warning on Saturday. Some reports say 45 climbers are still unaccounted for as the lifeless bodies of 31 people were recovered at the foot of Japan's second highest volcano located some 200 kilometers west of Tokyo. The eruption covered affected regions with ash and rocks to areas 3 kilometers down the slope. Most of the 250 people stuck on the volcano made it down safely Saturday night. Back here in the nation, the heads of Korea's biggest banking groups are reportedly taking home much larger paychecks than their counterparts in many other advanced nations, including Japan and the U.S. And there are increasing calls to put an end to this. Our Son Jung-in has more.
Ousted Chief of KB Financial Lee Myung-rok, who was dismissed after being suspended over a series of mismanagement charges, received nearly $600,000 in salary during the first half of this year. Im's salary may seem high for some, but it pales in comparison to the heads of other local banking groups. According to data from January to June period this year, Citibank Korea CEO Ha Young-gu was paid $2.3 million, while Hana Financial Group Chairman Kim Jung-tae received more than $1.2 million. The figure was similar last year, with top banking groups' chief executives taking home bumper bonuses and stock shares on top of their basic salary. Market watchers claim their paychecks are too high. The average pay for financial CEOs in Japan is around $1 million, roughly a third of what their Korean counterparts receive. But Japan's banks' combined net profits are nearly 10 times higher than those in Korea. Korean banks are also known to pay their CEOs more than those in the U.S., even higher than Bank of America, which is the fourth biggest bank in the world. Data shows that banks in Japan and the U.S. earn half of their profits doing business overseas. The same figure is under 10% for banks in Korea. Local banks have come under criticism for lining their pockets, while society's most vulnerable struggle to pay off high-interest loans. 손정인, 아리랑 뉴스.
Korea posted a current account surplus for the 30th straight month in August, but the margin was down from the previous month. The Bank of Korea says last month's surplus stood at nearly $7.3 billion, which is down nearly $600 million from the July figure. Analysts attribute the on-month drop to seasonal factors, such as the nation's tourism deficit expanding, as many Koreans opted to travel overseas for summer vacations, including August. Now, Korea's current account surplus during the year has totaled more than $54 billion. The central bank forecasts the cumulative surplus for the entire year to be around $84 billion. While more women are entering the workforce here in Korea, the glass ceiling remains very much intact. A new report from Credit Suisse shows that the proportion of female executives in Korea is slightly over 1%, the lowest among the 36 nations surveyed, and far behind Thailand, which topped the list at more than 26%. The report also points to Korea's gender pay gap, which is at 39%. That's the highest on the list. Now, these are some of the issues the government has been trying to address in recent years, but experts say a lot more support needs to be provided to women in Korea after they give birth if the country wants to see many of them return to the workforce. Now, in Korean society, there has always been a thin line between discipline and abuse when it comes to physical punishment. But whether thin or thick, that line will now come with a hefty sentence. Our Kwon So-ah has more.
The Korean public was outraged earlier this year over a series of cases in which women physically abused their stepdaughters to death. Despite the severity of their actions, the two offenders were punished with 10 and 15 years in prison, respectively. The cases and others like them prompted the country to strengthen the laws against child abuse. Before the law was revised, people found guilty of abusive actions that resulted in the death of a child received a minimum of 3 years in prison with a possibility of suspended sentence. Under the new law, a convicted offender will get a minimum 5-year sentence and could face life in prison. A parent who physically harms their child could also have their parental rights deprived, and the punishments for child care workers who are found guilty of violent acts will be strengthened. Adults who suspect abuse will now be required by law to report their suspicions to police or relevant agencies. Those in positions of power, such as teachers and child care workers, will face fines of up to 5 million won, or roughly $4,800 for failing to do so. Child welfare experts welcome the changes, but say cooperation with related organizations will be necessary for them to be effective. They also point out that there is a lack of manpower at child protection centers in the nation. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
The Korean musical scene has been growing in diversity over recent years, and this year especially has peaked with some of the biggest musical productions yet. Our Im Yoon-hee joins me today and has a new type of up-close and personal experience musical fans here might be very much interested in. Good afternoon, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon. Right, so the Korean musical really has been seen by many as sort of an extension of the Korean wave, or what we call Hallyu. And so this year we've seen some very successful Korean musicals, and one of the hottest musicals of this year opened not just its front door but its back door as well, giving viewers a chance to take a look at what goes on behind the scenes. So take a look.
An action story of the wild frontier, full of love, romance, and battles between the good and the bad. The musical Zorro was first staged in Korea in 2011. And this past August, the masked Spanish hero made a successful return to the musical stage. But what's it like to play the role of such a passionate crime fighter? A group of audience members from Japan were curious about the backstage action, the place where everything comes together. And they were able to get up close and personal with the stage props and even some of the actors.
The actors have to change very quickly, usually within a minute, sometimes even in 30 seconds, so there is always someone here to help them change. But I don't think they enjoy the hectic chaos.
One of the most popular scenes in the musical takes place on a life-size recreation of a train. Billows of steam, lights, and sound effects put everything into action.
From the auditorium, the train doesn't look so big, but as I approached it, I realized how large it actually was. The fact that these actors do scenes on this train is very impressive.
And from the stage, the group is shown how things work, including all the special effects that go into bringing each scene to life.
Even though I've seen many performances, being backstage for the first time is really unique, and having the actors explain everything makes it very memorable.
The audience members see us on stage and must wonder what kind of people we are. So this program creates a sense of intimacy between the actors and the audience.
From the stage to the behind-the-scenes action, these audience members were able to see the production for what it is, behind the mask.
And the actors themselves actually guide the tours.
Right, so a very unique opportunity to not only see the sets, but really get up close and personal and meet these actors, many who are becoming very big in the musical scene because Korean musicals are really making a name for themselves as well. And so in this tour, you get to meet Garcia, the actors who play Garcia and Diego. So for anybody who's fans of those characters, that's a perfect way to go see them.
So what's going to take for people to be on one of these tours?
So they actually limit this to 20 people per tour, and there are 2 tours left this year. And so they're going to be offering that if you actually have to go to the Chungmu Art Hall the day of the tour, which you can find on, you can go straight to the tour, to the Art Hall and get the tickets there. They open tickets at 5 p.m. and you have to be there early to make sure you get their tickets because they are going to run out. That's what they said. Past tours have been sold out performances, I guess you can say.
Not surprisingly so, too.
Right, so people are very excited about these. A lot of, like you saw in the report, fans from other countries who really want to go see these Korean musicals and get to know the actors and get to know the people who really are playing these characters.
All right, thank you very much, Yoon-hee, for today's report.
You're very welcome.
Good afternoon, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. Now, we've been having on and off showers all across the nation since yesterday, but they should clear out by this evening, starting in the central region. Now, except for Jeju Island, which will continue seeing rain through tomorrow with a total accumulation of 30 millimeters. Now, Seoul is expecting less than 5 millimeters over the upcoming hours, now while most other regions will see around 10. Now, the rain has brought down our daytime temperatures. Highs are ranging in the low to high 20s depending where you are. Now, as for the weather conditions in Incheon, where the Asian Games are being held, the rain has stopped, but the clouds will stick around with the highs reaching up to 21 degrees. Now going over to our readings for today, Seoul will peak at 22 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will reach up to 24 and 26 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island will get up to 28, while Dokdo and Mankungang are slightly lower at 22. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and have a wonderful day.
And that's all we have for you now. Our next newscast is at 4 p.m. Korea time. I'll see you then.